Trinidad and Tobago, and wherever we are being viewed or heard. I want to welcome you members of the media here in San Fernando to our headquarters this afternoon as we give an update and a response essentially to what was said by both Minister Khan and Minister Imbert, Minister of Energy and Minister of Finance at their press conference this morning. But first, before I get into that, let me thank you members of the public for the overwhelming support that we would have been given from you members of the public as you supported a noble cause. You supported the OWTU's acquisition of these assets through our company, Patriotic Energy and Technology Company Limited, for one main reason, and that is to provide hope to Trinidad and Tobago. To provide hope in a situation where today the country is in deep crisis of high unemployment, crisis of high inflation, crisis of underemployment, crisis of exploitation. No good news coming to Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore the only refreshing breath of air and good news will come with the Patriotic's acquisition of these assets. And the public saw a benefit not for the OWTU or even for our company Patriotic, but you saw in it a benefit for Trinidad and Tobago at a time when the country most desperately is in need of assistance to take it out of the depths and the grips of despair. Absolutely nobody can, from the economist to the politician, to the employers, to the workers, to the man in the street, absolutely nobody, no one can argue successfully that today, in 2021, Trinidad and Tobago is in deep crisis. And may I say that that crisis did not start with COVID-19 last year. We were on a precipitous fall economically prior to that. The workers were going home by the thousands prior to the intervention of COVID-19 reaching our shores with this global pandemic. While we are aware of that, we are saying that better steps could have been put in place to mitigate where we now are if we were on the right track. And the only right track that we were on is that the OWTU had taken a decision in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago to do what? To acquire these assets for the benefit of the country, and therefore provide hope, provide jobs, and bring about a ray of sunshine where there are many clouds of darkness in the sky of Trinidad and Tobago. And so, for that, let me again thank you, members of the public, who would have seen the benefit and supported us and continue to support us in our quest to acquire these assets. Let me also thank you, members of the media, for your steadfast and continuous support by coming and doing the coverage and so on, and carrying the news, carrying a rebuttal on each occasion to the misinformation or the disinformation that would come from the agents of the government on this issue. Whether those misinformation was intention or just an omission, you carry the response. And again, we want to thank you for coming this afternoon. And of course, I want to specifically thank the members of the media who would have been on that press conference held by both ministers this morning for their intervention and their questions, their pointed questions and so on, which in our respectful view did not get the deserving response and answers. But here's what. We are going to, this afternoon, in the time allotted for us, we are going to put on the table exactly what, as we see it, as we know it, the facts, and nothing but the facts. How this entire process would have played out, and what is the current position of the union, and why we feel they responded how they responded. I want to start by saying that this issue as to where we are this afternoon, why the government communicated after the cabinet meeting yesterday that they are now going back out to open market. The reason why we are in this position is one reason and one reason alone. Let's get that clear. It is the issue of the lien on the assets of TPHL. In other words, were it not for the lien being held by the bondholders, the financiers, the banks, all of whom would have loaned the government monies for whatever reason over the years and in 2019 and subsequently when TPHL would have borrowed on those assets, that is the problem. They borrowed up to their throats, and those who are holding the assets are not about to release those assets, and therefore that continues to be the issue. And the minister glossed over that. Both ministers glossed over that issue as if that is not a problem or an issue. And so I will take you through a chronology of events that would have led us to this point today. So you would recall the RFP and our response. No need to go into that. You would also recall the union making a $700 million upfront payment for those assets. And at that time, we had the support of Citigroup to raise that finance. Citigroup being our bankers back then. You would recall on September the 25th, 2019, the government through its Minister of Finance, the Honorable Clifton, would have offered in writing an approach that we did not ask for, but a quote-unquote generous approach. So in other words, while we said that we were going to pay $700 million upfront, the government and the ministers in their wisdom decided that they will offer 10 years to repay with a 3-year moratorium and give some 10 conditions for us to meet within 1 month. Let us recall that. Because we were so prepared and because of all the work that we would have done prior, the union would have met that 1 month deadline. The minister himself would have confirmed that we would have satisfied that 10-point deadline. So in other words, they offered and we accepted the offer of a 10-year payment plan, 3-year moratorium, first 3 years moratorium, and so on, and to provide these conditions. The minister on the 15th of November, the minister would have agreed, the Minister of Finance now, would have agreed that we satisfied. And I want us to play for you again this afternoon what the minister said then about that 10 points.
Because the OWTU formed a company called Patriotic. They put in a bid for the refinery, and we selected them as the preferred bidder because they were by far the best bidder. And I don't want to talk out of turn. We gave Petrotrin a month to deal with some issues that the evaluation team is mainly public servants and experts, had some issues with how Patriotic was looking at how they will take over the refinery. They asked them 10 questions. I can report tonight. Patriotic has answered those 10 questions. And the cabinet will be making a decision on that in the very near future. If everything works according to plan, we're going to move the OWTU from a trade union to a commercial business company earning money for its members. Only PNM could do that. You think UNC could do that? You think UNC could build a new society like that? Taking a trade union from being workers to being owners of capital and generators of income only PNM could do that. Only we. And as Dr. Rowley said, you take all kind of insult from them, all kind of talk from them, talking about the trade union, you take all kind of buff from them, all kind of insult from them. But they put in the best bid. And we don't deal with things based on grievance or who insult you. They put in the best bid, and we are going to work with the oil field through workers' trade union to create that new system, that new refinery. But this is what your PNM government and this country's future, right?
And thanks for that. So I recall that because there's a danger in us forgetting. And so this afternoon, as we chronicle all the events, that's the minister, the same minister speaking there back in 2019. Okay, the government subsequently appointed a negotiating team. And that negotiating team comprised of a particular member of the transition team and other members appointed by the government. And we were meeting with them to flesh out all of the requirements and so on, so that we could have come to the point where we signed an asset purchase agreement. We reported to you, members of the media, in particular here in South, that on numerous occasions in our meetings with that committee, that negotiating team appointed by the government, that we had problems with a particular individual. I'm not going to spend much time this afternoon, but just to remind you, there was a particular individual who was also part of the transition team, found his way on that government negotiating team, and no end of worries. He was totally against this, the union acquiring these assets on behalf of the people. I just want to put that back out because we would have said that before. And so you'd want to fast forward now to the 17th of July, where the 15th, let's just go to the 15th of July, and that is July, that is last year, 2020. You will recall the Prime Minister saying at a meeting in Santa Flora that in a matter of days, the OWTU is going to sign on to agreement to acquire the assets, the former assets of Petrotrin, and Patriotic will become the owner, or words to that effect. You would recall that. And then, as we met with the same government-appointed committee, it was on the 17th of July, for the first time, we were presented with a document to sign, and that document said that there's a problem with the lien and that the bondholders will not release the assets. In other words, that they wanted us to accept not first, or not second, but third lien on those assets. Now, let's just go back. One of the 10 points that the minister asked us to satisfy, and we satisfied, was the issue of restart financing. How you're going to restart the refinery and so on. Where you're going to get the money from. And we would have satisfied all along that the money to restart the refinery will come from Traffic Bureau through an arrangement that we had with Traffic Bureau. They will provide the finance for us to repair and so on. We'll restart the refinery. And as we begin to produce products, they will get their payment in products subsequently going down the road. Good agreement. The only issue there was the issue of the transfer of the assets. Because you would know that if they are going to spend some $500 million to repair these assets, it is obvious that they would want something to hold during the time of the repayment of that loan. Nobody spends that money without something to hold. But in us accepting the government offer and about to spend that money to do the repairs, here's the problem. The bondholder said, no, you cannot do that. You cannot make such an offer. That offer you made is not valid. And so our lawyers begin to haggle with their lawyers. On the 28th of August last year, the TPHL lawyers for the first time formally advised that they could not go forward. And that's in writing, we have that. They also said that it was not only the bondholders, but it was also other banks that those debts, those assets were tied up with. So it is not just the bondholders and so on, but a number of other banks that had hold and still have hold on those assets. So that's the lawyers talking to us. On the 4th of September, their lawyers, the TPHL lawyers said that our Restart financiers, that is now Traffic Bureau, had to accept thirdly. So this is lawyers now talking to lawyers. They say, listen, if this thing has to go forward, your financiers, the people who are going to spend the money to fix this thing, not firstly, second, they have to accept thirdly, because all these other people have first and second hold on those assets. And somewhere in the mix, you'll recall, on the 28th of September last year, the Prime Minister announced that, listen, this thing went on too long, and therefore by the 31st of October, that's the deadline, this thing have to come to an end. And subsequent to that announcement, our lawyers continue to engage their lawyers back and forth, and on the 7th of October, our lawyers wrote them requesting a meeting with the ministers, Minister Young, and of course, the Minister of Energy. So think about it. Deadline was given. The lawyers continued to go back and forth with all of their argument. And the lawyers were instructed to, and in fact on the 7th of October, put in writing our request for that meeting. It was not until the 21st of October, 7th requested, deadline on the 31st, but it was not until the 21st of October last year, 3 weeks into the deadline date given that month of October, we finally got that meeting. And here's who were present at that meeting, among others, TPHL team, and of course, Minister Young and Minister Khan. At that meeting, we were requesting that the government consider two proposals that we had. We came to that meeting with. One, that the government, if the government could free up the lien so that we can do the repairs and that those who spending the money can hold as collateral while we repay that debt, the assets, free up the lien. Government to issue some form of guarantee to do that. They said no can do. We said to them, well, here's another suggestion. Why don't you carve out those assets, the refinery and the port, for which we are going to repair and operate and own, separate them from the rest of TPHL's assets, heritage and so on, so that those two assets will be free. They said, no, that is not practical. That is not a practical solution. It was at that point, we asked for a break in the meeting. And we went out, and our team huddled together, and we contacted our lawyer on the phone at that point we decided that we will put in a proposal. We came back to the meeting and we told them that give us some time, we will put in a proposal, but that proposal will come before the city first. That point is significant, Trinidad and Tobago, because what the minister did this morning, he gave the impression that we would have been in discussion with RBC for over a year. It was at that point we began to engage in earnest RBC International for financial support. And that is when we came back with an upfront purchase offer of 500 million. Why? Because we tied it to their offer of the offer that was made on 25th of September 2019. That 700 million we will now offer you present value, the present net value of 500 for what you would take some 13 years to pay. So in other words, the value of that 13 years down the road, we paying you upfront 500 million US. And that will be supported by RBC. But that the conversation with RBC did not start, and obviously could not have started before, because we were made an offer, a generous offer, which we thought was genuine, which we thought was in good faith, which we accepted, which we were pursuing. All that offer needed was the restart financing to do the repairs, which we had. But again, where the union recognized the problem, confirmed by the both ministers, was at that meeting, and that is why we made that offer. So the discussion with RBC was very, very recent, and it was at a very initial stage. Yeah, at a very initial stage. And so we got, because of the work that we would have done and the potential that RBC would have seen in our proposal, and the union's company's ability through the consortium that we engage, and we are talking here about international management and so on, people with refinery turnaround experience and so on to do all of the repairs. Because of the quality of that team, they said, they indicated that they are interested and they will work with us to raise the financing. But here's what, they would need an agreement from the government that they are committed to selling those assets. Now, it's one thing for the bank to tell you that, but the bank would need from the seller something that says that, okay, we agree to sell and so on, and of course they will proceed to the work. Mind you, no bank, you could walk in any bank, whether you mortgage for your house to purchase a house this morning, or to purchase a refinery with international financing, no bank will give you confirmed financing in a day or 2 days or a month. They have to do their due diligence. But part of that is that the seller must agree in writing that they are prepared to sell. So, we go to October 29th, when we officially submitted the proposal. The proposal for the 500 million US, and of course the proposal to restart financing and so on, and of course RBC assistance to raise that money for us. Well, the 31st of October is when the day of reckoning started, when all of a sudden the Minister of Energy made an announcement, a surprise announcement, that the government will now go out and open market and so on, and we come to the end. My words to what was said, for Patriotic did not meet the requirement and so on. That was not true. And because it was not true, we appealed through you, members of the media, to the government to send our proposal before an independent committee. And we pointed to the evaluation committee that had the responsibility earlier on in the previous year to look at our proposal and recommend that we be the preferred bidder. We requested that that committee go over our proposal and talk with us, request from us any clarity or so that they would need around the proposal. And they were granted that. We met with that committee on what, 1, 2, or 3 occasions and provided clarity. We provided clarity around the proposal. We satisfied concerns of the committee with respect to the question of fuel security. They wanted to be assured that during the period of all of these repairs and so on, while we are doing the turnarounds to get all of those plants ready for operation, ready for proper reliability, that the country is guaranteed fuel security seamlessly, and that the regional customers and so on that they now supply, they too are guaranteed. We supplied that guarantee to them. In fact, we had the head of Traffic Bureau, who they are now dealing with, who we made the point repeatedly, who had a relationship with Petrotrin and still with TPHL and so on, and with Paria as we speak. We're into the meeting, present at the meeting, the virtual meeting, and give on behalf of that international trading company the guarantee through an agreement that would be signed with the union to ensure that the public, the motoring public, local consumers, and also their customers who they now supply, nobody will suffer at any point in time for fuel. Because remember, Petrotrin at certain points in time during turnaround when they had their plants off, they would have been getting fuel from elsewhere, from outside, to satisfy local consumption and so on. And therefore it would have been no different. And they were committed in writing to that, to guarantee fuel supply and fuel guarantees and so on. We also, again, assured them that through our international consortium, the best in class, best in the world, people with all of the experience, they are the ones that will be responsible now for the actual turnaround and so on, as the top management, giving all of their experience and expertise and so on, bringing it to bear in the quickest possible time, all of those repairs. A proper management structure and so on. In other words, I just want to say for yet another occasion that Patriotic fulfilled all of its requirements for the operators of the facilities, the crude supply, the feedstock, market for the products, restart financing, which today the minister could not say that there was a problem with that, because there was never a problem with restart financing. So he could not say that. He just glossed over that very skillfully. And of course the workers with the knowledge of the plant. So we have all of that in place. Operators, crude, market for the products, restart financing, workers with the knowledge and experience, and so on. And of course, as I mentioned, fuel guarantee. The one thing that we require is for the government to make good on its commitment to remove the lien. Now, let me just go back to something very interesting with that lien issue. You will recall, after the great revelation by the leader of the opposition, with RBC, Traffic Bureau, and all of that, members of the media, do you recall a press conference on the 11th of November last year? Press conference hosted by the Prime Minister and the Minister, Minister of Energy, and Minister Imbo, Minister of Finance. I want to zero in here on what the Minister said. Now, the Minister, we saw the statement a short while ago, that's the previous year, but as recent as the 11th of November last year, 2020, here's what he's had to say. And I want to read from a quote here. And this is from today's dailies, one of today's dailies. Yeah? In fact, it is written by Anthony Wilson of the Express today. At a post-cabinet news conference on November 11, 2020, Imbert said the following, quote, "The leader of the opposition also said that we can't sell it because there was a mortgage." Nonsense. Obviously, if you are selling someone something, it must be free of all encumbrances. If any of you, and I am sure some of you are homeowners and would have entered into purchase agreement to buy property, one of the most basic clauses in a purchase agreement is that the vendor who is selling it agrees that on completion of the sale, it will be free of encumbrances. We are not selling anything with any mortgage or lien on it. We will deal with that. That is a government matter. That's a matter for the cabinet, for the corporation. So, if there's a lien, it would continue. If there's a lien, we can get the lien put on other assets. We can get the lien changed to something else. That is a matter for the corporation. So, end of quote. And if you think that Anthony Wilson misquoted him, or that we are misrepresenting what he said as recent as November 11th last year, in response to what the leader of the opposition said, if you think that that is not true, let's just get his actual statement.
And the final item I'd like to deal with from my perspective at this time, the leader of the opposition also said we cannot sell it. The Prime Minister has indicated to you, they summarized what she said. We can't sell it because there's a mortgage. Nonsense. Obviously, if you're selling someone something, it must be free of encumbrances. If any of you, and I'm sure some of you have, are homeowners, would have entered into a purchase agreement to buy property, one of the most basic clauses in a purchase agreement is that the vendor, the person selling it, agrees that on completion of the sale, it will be free of encumbrances. We're not selling anything with any mortgage or lien on it. We will deal with that. That is a government matter. That's a matter for the cabinet, for the corporation. So if there is a lien, we can get the lien put on other assets. We can get the lien changed to something else. That is a matter for corporation. So it is a nonsense for the leader of the opposition to say that the refinery can't be sold because at this time there's a lien on some of the assets. I just want to make those points from a finance perspective.
Right. So the question he did not address today is, did he get the lien put on other assets? because that was the problem with their offer. Now remember, let us just understand. The only reason why RBC came into the picture, because their offer of September 25th, 2019, there was a problem with the link. In other words, if there was no problem with the link, and they could have done just as he said, we would not have had to engage RBC at this late stage. Let's just understand what we are dealing with. And that because he made that offer in September 25th of 2019, we would have disengaged discussion with Citigroup and 700. We no longer talking 700. The government made an offer. We accepted the offer. So we disengaged all finances to outright purchase, and we are now dealing with the offer that the government made. Fast tracking again. And that the only time we recognize that is when we came to sign that same agreement that the Prime Minister said that we're supposed to be signing on to. We realized that, wait, we have a problem here. And so when we confirm, I'm retracting for you now, I'm recapping for you, when we confirm in that meeting with both Ministers, Stuart Young and Minister Khan, when they confirmed that this lean is a problem, then we had to engage RBC. So that is of most recent vintage, the engagement of RBC. What he tried skillfully to get the country to accept is that we were talking with RBC for the whole year, and we still can't get RBC to commit. RBC came late in the day because they had a problem. Now, here's what happened with the committee now. When he made that announcement on the 11th, we took that to be gospel. He's the Minister of Finance. He made the statement, there is no problem with the lien. And in our meeting on the 20th, on the 20th of November, it was also confirmed by the chairman of the committee, the evaluation committee, the minister's statement. Yes, the minister made the statement, and yes, the government can remove the lien. That is their issue. At that point, members of the media, Trinidad and Tobago, of course, follow these steps. If we are now having initial discussion with RBC, very early in the day, they cannot commit because they have no agreement of sale with the government. They can't go further. In any case, they would need time to do all their due diligence and so on. Extensive time. No bank will just put out money like that. What $1 million? What $1 million US? Not 500 million US. Nobody will do that. They need to do their due diligence, and it's a process that would take time. But if we were so far gone in the process of acquisition through the acceptance of their offer, and the minister is now saying that lien is not a problem, contradicting the two other ministers, and that being confirmed by the chair of the committee, we said, okay, well, respectfully, we would want to return to the offer that was made. Because we have the restart financing that has never been, and it was not an issue, money to restart, $500 million to restart, to do all the repairs and so on, get workers engaged and so on, get contractors busy, local money spinning through the local economy and so on, everybody get it. We have that. But we don't now need any 500 million to go into any upfront purchase, because the minister has said categorically that lien is not a problem and that he can separate the assets. You heard? Separate the assets, and that whoever it is will have the whole money. He's making it seem simply that we try to get money from RBC, and that the lien he was talking about is that upon the purchase they would free. That is not the issue. That's what he's trying to do again. he's trying to hoodwink the population by trying to make you, the public, believe that what he was talking about is that upon the purchase, they would transfer ownership. That is not what he was talking about. Their offer contemplated that we would spend money for the restart financing, restart it and pay down the road, 10 years down the road. But that for that offer to be valid or to be made operational, the people who spending the money need to have the lien removed. But the bondholders say no. So ministers come out with a big gambage and so on, attacking all who were in his line of fire and saying that that is not a problem, they will have it dealt with. It was on the basis of that we then said to them, well listen, we are so far down the road with our accepting your proposal, the government's proposal, the minister's proposal, and that the only thing was the lien. So if the lien is not an issue, well then let's close on that proposal. Our preferred option is to go back to that and to close. The minister said nothing about that because in our submission on the 27th of November, Patriotic submitted its response to the committee. And in that response, we give two options. Option one, our preferred option being that we complete the transaction on the basis of the offer that was made by the minister because the lien is no longer an issue. Hear that? That was number one option, our preferred option. And the second option, which would take longer obviously because the bank is now coming into the situation, is that we can look at the engage the bank through the process of raising that financing and so on. But that is not, we made it clear, that was not our preferred option simply because the essence of time is of the essence and so on. And we need to get this thing going. We need to complete it. The minister said absolutely nothing about that. So here's what it is now. We want to ask the question, what were the recommendations of that committee? Because all of those engagements took place. And I'm representing here to you this afternoon our input in that engagement with the evaluation committee. Again, it is easy to peddle the narrative for the unsuspecting person. You didn't have no money, and there's so long they're trying to raise the money, they have no money, and therefore they close off on it. And that they bend over backward. They didn't bend over backward. Because in our discussion with that negotiating team appointed by the government, I said it before, there were individuals, but one in particular, who were against it. We received only 30% of the information requested. We complained about that to our lawyers. 30%, which they admitted that they only supplied 30% of the information with respect to all of the assets and so on, its condition, so state of the plant and all of those things. And therefore, to try to make it look as if we are at fault. We get a chance to raise money and could we raise the money? We think that is very disingenuous. Because absolutely no mention was made about what did the union submit on the 27th? What did the union say about that? And what did the cabinet say about what the union said? What was the recommendations of the committee? Did the committee say to go out back out to open market? Did the committee say that? And who were the people that was engaging in discussion and looking at this issue from November 30th to yesterday? Until the cabinet got it. Was it that the cabinet was looking at it for all of that time? And how could we have such urgency with a November 30th deadline? And November, we into December, Christmas passed, New Year's passed, and we into January, and so on. What was happening all the time? There are missing parts of this story. I want to submit to you, Trinidad and Tobago. A lot of missing parts of this story. And therefore, another major omission on the part of the minister was the response that we gave to his letter yesterday. Let's just get that right. The minister today, at that extensive press conference, perhaps conveniently or perhaps he really forgot to mention that when he sent out his letter dated January 18th, yesterday we received it by email after lunch, sometimes 3, 4 o'clock yesterday, and we responded yesterday. Yes, last night as a matter of fact. Minister 12. We responded. Right. So the minister has in his possession a response which he did not tell the country why he didn't adhere to or agree with the response or disagree with the response. And so we would have written to Minister Imber, and we confirmed this morning through the Permanent Secretary that they would have received it, and except if the Permanent Secretary would have received it and didn't pass it on to the Minister, which we doubt very much. Those questions are up in the air that the Minister had in his possession. Not only him, Minister Cantu also had a copy of this. Both gentlemen, both honorable ministers, honorable men, very honorable men, would have come to that press conference today with this grave and great gaping omission of the response. Because if he wrote yesterday on the basis of cabinet decision, that's serious, he should have provided to the media with the response. They responded last night, but we cannot accede to the response. I mean, that would have been respectful. More than that, it would have been more respectful if he had responded to even Patriotic. Telling Patriotic, well, look, listen, we're going on with this. Going down this road, as stated in our letter, because of the cabinet decision, and so on. None of the above occurred, sadly. Because we said, and I want to quote for you, we said that we would prefer, we would like you to engage with us before any public pronouncement. Meaning that you wrote us, we wrote you back, we would like to talk because we feel that there's something missing here. But even more than that, because your response did not deal with our option A, the first option, to conclude it the way in which you would have offered us. So we would like to meet with you urgently. But here's what. In our response to them, and I would read excerpts of this afternoon. Yeah? He read from his, yes. We read from ours, yes. Credit Suisse now, these things have many dimensions in it. This is why we want you to pay close attention. And if you leave out part of the puzzle, it might very well be the most important part of the puzzle. And you will not have a complete picture. But if you leave out part of the puzzle on purpose, it would be to convey in the mind of the unsuspecting listener or persons who are looking on, union is the problem, they just couldn't raise the money, and that's that. We bend over backward, we bend over 1 year, and that's that. No, that's not that. And therefore, we would have had discussions with Credit Suisse, recent discussions with Credit Suisse. In fact, the top office holder in Credit Suisse, and may I remind you that Credit Suisse is the is the bank, an international bank, that arrange all of their financing and so on. So if there's anybody who knows about Petrotrin, TPHL, debt and so on, how it's structured, what bondholders, all of that, is Credit Suisse. And Credit Suisse would have indicated to us that, listen, if there's an issue with respect to the bondholder, there is an issue with that, they can't, bondholders would not release that. The quickest way to solve all of this is that Credit Suisse will engage with you, Patriotic, to raise the financing. So, follow this. RBC now coming in the picture, bank now coming in the picture, they would need time, more time. But if you wait to buy a house, and the bank who is holding that as a mortgage on that house know everything about that mortgage, is willing to assist, it certainly will be a faster process. Because it is that bank that knows everything. Who holding the bond, the mortgage, and so on. Who are the banks and so on. And what they would require to release it. They know. The other bank will take time to do that, and time is of the essence. But I just want to, let's just underline something here again. Why are all of these international institutions just giving support to Patriotic? Is it because they like Trinidad and Tobago? Land of what? Sand and sea and carnival and bacchanal and so on? No, no, no. That may be so. We have all of that. That is good. We are proud of all of that. But the profound reason why they are giving support, financial support, is because of the soundness of the proposal and the potential of that proposal. Credit Suisse saw that we had the required financing that is taken care of, and they are prepared to work with us. And it is in this letter, in response to the minister, we said that yesterday. And we are certain that the minister is aware that Credit Suisse is prepared to stand with Patriotic. And all we were asking for is for, in this letter, is for a meeting with not just us, because we could say anything, but with Credit Suisse, whom they know, Patriotic, and the minister. He mentioned nothing about anything about that. And let me just give you some excerpts of this particular response. You read his? It's only fair that we read ours. And let me just start by saying the letter was sent to them Minister 12 last night. Why? Because after receiving this, we again had communication with the representative of Credit Suisse, confirming their willingness before we put that into a document. In other words, we can't put that into a document unless we confirm and reaffirm and so on. And that took place. So, January 18, 2021, Minister of Finance, Corporation Seoul, Honorable Carl Inwood, Ministry of Finance, Eric Williams, Finance Building, Independence Square, Port of Spain, response to letter dated January 18, 2021, regarding Patriotic's proposed acquisition of the assets of Caracara Refining Company and Paria Fuel Trading Company, Paria. Honorable Minister, I would like to extend greetings on behalf of the board and shareholders of Patriotic Energies and Technologies Company, Patriotic. To the Honorable Prime Minister, yourself and all your cabinet colleagues, the government of which you are an integral member is charged with the significant responsibilities as custodians during this period of global imbalance and local economic challenges. I would like to confirm that we are in receipt of your letter dated today, January 18, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. in which you express no discomfort regarding Patriotic's capacity to successfully restart and profitably operate the assets of Caracara. We at Patriotic are pleased that those concerns have been unequivocally satisfied and that there is growing confidence in our company's technical and commercial capacity. We have also noted your concern with regards to our readiness to complete the acquisition of the asset via, quote, an upfront cash purchase of US $500 million, end of quote. And we further observe your letter's silence regarding the offer made to Patriotic on September 25th, 2019. The letter continues. Patriotic presented two options to the evaluation committee through its chairman, Mr. Vishnu Danpal, on the 27th of November 2020, with the following excerpts. A, financing the restart of the facility in the context that the government agrees in writing to sell the assets referred to via the deferred payment offer of September 25th, 2019, free of existing liens, which the Honorable Minister of Finance publicly stated that the lien is a government issue and that the government could easily resolve it for the purpose of the acquisition. And your confirmation of this statement in your capacity as Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance. B, financing the acquisition and restarting the referred assets at a discounted price of US $500 million. We noted that option B, though not our preferred path, would be available only in the event that TPHL, Trinidad Petroleum Holding Limited, and its shareholders encountered insurmountable challenges traversing the credit governance, which is the lien. We understand that its inability, which would have adversely impacted its ability to retain the deferred payment terms by your good self, Honorable Minister, and accepted by Patriotic on September the 30th. In other words, we were saying that that is not our preferred option, but we are aware of the problems that you were encountering with respect to this lien issue. The letter goes on now. The silence of your letter, Honorable Minister, with regards to option A and the focus on option B has led us to conclude that the above caveat on option B is a reality. Patriotic anticipated the possibility of those challenges, and notwithstanding the presentation made by RBC Capital Markets and their letter of interest, we opened conversations with Credit Suisse regarding option B. Credit Suisse has provided financing to TPHL and Petrotrin in the past and are acutely informed of the intricacies of the assets being offered. With that understanding, we opened conversation with the head of the bank and have made satisfactory progress in the last 2 weeks. In other words, when we suspect something happening, those conversations started. All right, let's continue. Given our progress, I reached out to the chairman of the evaluation committee, Mr. Vishnu Danpal, 1 week ago to discuss the possibilities of financing relationship with Credit Suisse. And Mr. Danpal was unavailable to discuss. Mr. Danpal was retired, okay? So he's out of the picture. Your letter earlier today presents us with an avenue for communication that has been desired for the last 2 weeks. In our conversation with Credit Suisse, they have expressed great enthusiasm and the confidence in their capacity to successfully finance the acquisition price of $500 US million for Patriotic. We would now like to request an urgent meeting with you and your team. In that meeting, Patriotic, along with Credit Suisse leadership, would like to propose a definite path forward. A journey such as ours in this process deserves a conclusion that all parties desire. Patriotic is committed to successfully completing the acquisition and the restart of the offered assets and is prepared to do so via an upfront payment of US $500 million. We would further like to humbly request that we meet prior to the public announcement on the path forward prior to our urgent meeting. In other words, before you go out, let's meet and explore the possibilities that we would have outlined in this letter. And of course, we look forward to your urgent response and to meeting with you and your team to finalize the arrangement towards a successful completion of this transaction. So every step of the way, Trinidad and Tobago, Patriotic would have diligently did its part and more to keep in the race to ensure that we complete this process so that the country would benefit. And that when we recognize that even as the minister as recent as the 11th of November would have made a public pronouncement saying that lien is not the issue and that he can remove it, it's a government issue and so on. Notwithstanding that, because of that we made our proposal, then we realized that it is a problem. We are still prepared now to engage. And why Credit Suisse? Simply because they have expressed interest and because they are the ones with all of the information about all of the intricacies and so who are the bondholders, what the bondholders would require, and so on. And they will enter those discussions not at the beginning as RBC would and would require all of that time. They would enter the discussions with an advantage because of their seized with all of the information and so on. But why he didn't mention that? Why he didn't mention for one moment that, listen, they are now talking with Credit Suisse, but we can't give them no more time because we took a decision. I mean, even that would have been a level of disclosure that would have conveyed a level of forthrightness and honesty, quite frankly, to the public. But to withhold that, we think that that was a great and grave omission on the part of the minister, who was really busy to get to the Senate. So he probably would slip him to raise this. But we are raising it now because we responded to his letter yesterday. And so I just want to ask a couple of questions again. What was the recommendation of that committee? Is what I'm saying true? Did Patriotic put as his preferred option to go back to that offer that the minister, as a consequence of his statement, there was no problem with it? Because lien is not an issue. But I want to say to you, Trinidad and Tobago, lien is the most central issue on this, in this whole acquisition process. As we speak, the bondholders are not prepared to release them. The bondholders were not prepared to support the proposal made by the minister. Was the minister aware of the bondholders' position when he made that proposal back in 2019, September 25th? We don't know. Was he aware subsequently? We don't know. But that is a matter of fact that the bondholders are not prepared to let go these assets in an arrangement such as what the government would have offered. And that we now trying to get around that, that is how the 500 million came up. So he disregarded that and focused only on the 500 million. The 500 million came up as a result of their not being able to go through with their offer. If there's one point you want to make today, it's that point. That 500 million offer only came about because of the government's inability to go through with an offer that they made to Patriotic, which Patriotic accepted in good faith, and which we continue to work on diligently. So here's what. We engage our consultants and so on, foreign and local consultants. We engage members of the consortium. We went and do market survey and studies, paid for in US dollars, determining, notwithstanding the price of the fluctuation of the price of oil, where those markets are, and that we can penetrate markets that Petrotrin never even dreamed of or even considered through a comprehensive markets survey and study that we would have done by an international reputed market surveyor, looking at in the deep south here, in Central and Latin America and so on, where we will be able to sell products coming out of the refinery, and therefore the viability of the refinery and its business going forward. We paid for that study. But we also engaged our lawyers out of London and the United States of America, Houston, and that those lawyers, they won't come for a pretty penny, well, for less than a pretty penny, more than a pretty penny, because that penny is not even in US. Plenty English pounds, US greenbacks. Tens of millions of dollars the union would have spent throughout this process, this acquisition process. And for the minister to come and in a press conference just simply give the impression that we just couldn't raise the money and attempt to dismiss us, we feel that is unfair to not just us in Patriotic, but it's unfair to Trinidad and Tobago. It's unfair to Petrotrin workers. It's unfair to those who are unemployed. It's unfair to those people who are today lined up, ready, willing and able to get a job in the refinery, in the restarting of that refinery that would bring foreign exchange to Trinidad and Tobago. We are in deep crisis in Trinidad and Tobago today because of the lack of foreign exchange. And that every day that passes, that problem becomes more and more pronounced. You, the ordinary citizen, cannot get access to foreign exchange. Small businesses and so on cannot get access to foreign exchange because we are now not a big net foreign exchange earner. Importing crude, converting it to products, selling it on the international market for Forex, for US and so on, would bring foreign exchange back into the country. That is what we are about. That is what we are requesting, that they work with us to complete this process so that the country would benefit. But there's something that was very, very suspicious to us in his response. And I want you, Trinidad and Tobago, to pay close attention to that. Pay close attention to the way forward now. And here's what it is. Today, I want to read that part. Today, the Cabinet reviewed the findings of and recommendations of the Evaluation Committee and decided that in view of all the circumstances, the exclusivity granted to Patriotic with respect to the acquisition of refining and logistics assets of Caracarea Refining Limited and Paria Fuel Trading Limited can no longer be supported by Trinidad Petroleum Holding Limited, TPHL, or by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. In addition, the Cabinet has decided that TPHL and the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago proceed immediately to return to open market to explore all other options which may exist for the utilization of the refinery assets, utilization of the refinery assets in the shortest possible time frame, with the main priority and objective being to determine whether there are any suitable parties interested in operating the refinery. Sometimes it's not only what is said, but how it is said and what is not said. So the question is, was there any discussion by TPHL, government, whether through a backdoor channel or otherwise, with any other agency while this process was going on. Because if you engage with me in earnest, you can't be talking to somebody else. And how quick would you get somebody to come out of the woodwork and quickly restart this refinery now? If you were not talking, or somebody wasn't talking with somebody. So it raises a lot of suspicion around why would the cabinet take a decision after all of this time, resources and so on would have been expended. And after you made an offer, and he's accepted. But even if you have a problem with that offer, why would you not respond to our letter to examine how this can be resolved once and for all? It raises a number of questions. So it's a wait and see now to see how fast they would get this person or persons also to come and operate the refinery. How that person could be prepared if that person was not prepared to restart the refinery. And if that person is not prepared, what sense would it make for all of this time now to go and restart to get prepared when we would have done all of this work? Where we want to repair, what exactly is the nature of the repairs and so on, the condition of all of those plants. Because remember, I saw the Minister Minister of Energy, struggling to explain something which he was totally out of his depth. Talking about the preservation of the refinery and so on. He was not totally in a scientific or engineering way forthright in terms of the present condition of those assets. That they believe that is properly well protected. The assets are not properly protected. And any assets in a hastily mothball situation, in just about 3 weeks or so, you mothball those assets, and you did not maintain security over them to ensure that there were no theft over those assets. The assets have deteriorated, and also there were a lot of pilferages and so on. A lot of items were removed because the security outfit charged with the responsibility to provide security to make sure that everything stays intact. Today it is not so. And you would see, just from a cursory glance passing through Pointe-à-Pierre, the condition of those assets. Look at the condition of the grounds. Look at the condition of the state of those tanks. Those assets have deteriorated. So how come somebody now will come so quickly and start those assets? Something is not right with that. And if you don't have somebody, the flip side now to that argument, if you don't readily have someone, then you are talking about a lengthy process with further deterioration of the assets and so on. And the question, I thank the media for all of those questions. The question is, if nobody responds, what then? And they didn't adequately address that. Well, he said it was a joke. And why would you do that when all of this work would have been done? Something is not right. And in time to come, as the Calypso would say, in short time to come, pay close attention. The public will see. Open your eyes, don't go to sleep. Don't go to sleep. Open your eyes and the public will see exactly what was not said or what was taking place in the background. We today reaffirm our commitment to the restart of the refinery, as we would have done our homework. We today reaffirm our request to meet with, notwithstanding the Cabinet's decision, we reaffirm our request to meet with the minister, for the minister and his team to interrogate, if that's the word, Credit Suisse commitment to stand with us, to deal with the challenges that they have, because clearly Trinidad and Tobago, there is a problem with respect to the lien. And no amount of trivializing it, or no amount of spin doctoring by both ministers, no amount of information juggling, trying to, as they juggle out of the conversation, pertinent information, no amount of that semantics would remove the issue, remove the real problem, that is the lien and the problems the bondholders have with respect to the offer that the government would have made. And that the only reason why we entered into the arrangement of an upfront cash purchase of recent vintage is because of the problems that they confirmed that they had with respect to their offer. They simply made an offer that could not be upheld. That's what that was. They are not forthright to come and tell the country that their offer could not stand. And because their offer could not stand, they had was to focus only on RBC's unpreparedness at this point in time to give them a letter of commitment. But how could RBC give you a letter of commitment at this early stage, even as you did not give them in writing your agreement to sell the assets? All of those things are missing parts in this story. And I did say, comrades, Trinidad and Tobago, remember, I did say that the Petrotrin story, the story of the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, which started a long time ago, but which was heightened with the closure of Petrotrin on November 30th, 2018. That story is far, far, far from over. Today, we are in January 2021, shut down since 2018. And the Petrotrin story is still having and gaining momentum. And may I say to you that even as we speak today, even as they attempt to bring closure on the issue with respect to Patriotic's involvement with our bid, the story is far, far from over. You know why? Because that closure Trinidad and Tobago would have brought pain and suffering and heartache and death and sickness and unemployment to a number of persons. It would have brought hardship to persons lining the southwestern peninsula of this country, from Pointe-à-Pierre or from Central straight down to Icarcus. It would have brought problems economically to Trinidad and Tobago. It would have caused the exacerbation of the problems that existed with foreign exchange. All of the above. Which is why when you had responding to the call, responding to what was the darkest hour in the economic future of Trinidad and Tobago, when you have responding to that, a patriotic entity, nobody else in Trinidad and Tobago responded, but the Oilfields Workers Trade Union rising to the occasion, trying to put back some semblance of economic stability in the country where the citizens will benefit. When you had that response taking place, the only response to that should be a genuine effort on the part of the government to see this process to its completion so that the country could benefit. No Chamber of Commerce, no Energy Chamber, none of the Doubting Thomases, no local financial institution, none rose to the occasion. The OWTU saw the benefit for the country, and we would have risked, we would have outlaid tens of thousands of our hard-earned dollars, not tens of thousands, tens of millions, sorry, tens of millions of our hard-earned capital, money, to invest in Trinidad and Tobago. And for the ministers, both ministers, to just smile and dismiss that. We think that it's a great injustice to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we want to have that recorded. And so today, as I close and open for questions, I just want to recap that our readiness is still there. That what was difficult in 2018 when the refinery was shut down and Petrotrin closed is 10 times more difficult today because more people lose jobs. As we speak, more people are going home, retrenchments. But notwithstanding that, and notwithstanding COVID, our partners, our business partners are still at the table. And therefore, the operators to operate the refinery with foreign management to give the type of direction and lead to ensure that what occurred prior under Petrotrin will not occur. They are still at the table. The supplier of crude to make sure that we have feedstock for the refinery, they are still at the table. The markets for the products, we are still with those markets. In fact, those markets are there now more in spite of the COVID situation. The restart financing, we have satisfied that issue, and that issue is not a problem. Again, we have outlined repeatedly where that is going to come from and how that is going to be spent to make sure that the refinery is restarted. And when that restarting process takes place, thousands of Trinidadians and Tobagonians will be actively employed, gainfully employed. And of course, we have the workers with the knowledge and competence and experience to run the assets when it has been restarted, and of course engage in the restarting process. And by all of those things, and with all of those things, we have given and continue to give fuel guarantee. All the government has to do is to make good on their commitment to remove the lien. If you can't remove the lien, to make good on your offer, tell the country that, and then let us proceed with Credit Suisse to close this agreement. And I want to thank you for your patience.
Can you say Patriotic will then drown?
Say it again?
Will Patriotic be putting in a bid in the second round now being opened by the government?
Okay, we are at last night we got this. We would have responded, as I mentioned. We are still waiting on a response. We deserve a response. We are waiting on a response. And we heard the press conference today. The executive of the Office Workers Trade Union and its general counsel will meet to determine the next step forward as to whether we put in a bid in this fresh rounds of what? Fresh rounds of going out, fresh rounds of proposal, and so on. Fresh rounds of going out, proposal, and so on. But alongside all of that, we will be having a strict and acute observance as to both in terms of visual and otherwise, as to what was happening behind the scene, what was happening in front of the scene, who was talking with whom, so that they can now boldly say that they can go out and get someone in a shortest possible time. And so we hope. This is an honorable government. This is a truthful government. This is a government that speaks the truth all the time. We hope that the government is genuine, and if the government is genuine, we hope that the government pay close attention to our response. And if they genuinely wanted to have this restarted We're the only local group that rose to the occasion patriotic. And we feel that the only way to go, really, is for all members of the cabinet to search your conscience and so on. All of you, search your conscience and so on. And we think that decision. Because the best and only way to go, to restore hope for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to have a good news, good moment announcement, where there are no good announcements, but to have a good one coming, is for you to allow Patriotic to complete this process. Yeah, right. Yeah, yes.
You talked about you still have, you want to think, you're committed to the whole process, you're considering whether or not you can bid. But you also spoke about the investment of tens of millions of dollars. And I think sometime before you would have credited the forefathers of the union for having the union in this position where they could have financially strong position, where they could have made such an investment. Where does that leave the fact that you have been rejected as of now? You don't know what is going to happen going forward. Where does that leave the union financially?
Well, we would have been put out, obviously, because the money came from somewhere. And fortunately, we would have had access through the sound and prudent management of the union's resources in the past by our forefathers. And therefore, it is that route we would have taken to invest in this. That investment, that money that we would have put out, that is what we are saying that that has gone. And if the government chooses to disregard all of that, the only valiant effort by a local patriot, we think that that is a bit unjust to not give all possibilities where there are possibilities to close this. You see, we would have been derailed by the government's offer. Let's put this on the table. The government's offer through the Minister of Finance on September the 25th, 2019, would have derailed Patriotic, because Patriotic came to the table with a support for $700 million to purchase these assets. Move on started, and all now we would have had a refinery operating. The government said, no, listen, no. Here's what, we have a better offer for you. We will give you 10 years to pay, 3 years to start paying, and so on. But here's some 10 things to work out. We did all of that. But when the rubber hit the road now, where we're supposed to really get this thing operational, the bondholders who were perhaps not a part of the government's offer said, no, it cannot happen. So we would have expended, gone down a road, expending, doing all this market research, all of those things, engaging consortium and so on, spending all of this money, incorporating a company, doing research, all of those things, and so on. We would have done all of that. While at the same time, the government, perhaps, I would hate to think that they knew, I would hate to think that the Minister on the 11th knew that, but still tell us, still, we were misled. We were misled, and that the cabinet must take responsibility and have in its deep consideration the fact that you misled this group and not shut the door on us. So how could they, after knowing full well that we spent all of this money, they mislead us, and they close the door. And they give the impression that they bend over backwards. They didn't bend over backwards. They mislead us. But in addition to that misleading us, what in fact you did, you appointed a team to talk with us, and that team we suspect that team is what is going to rise to the occasion and bring to the fore its preferred partner, and so on. Because there was an individual, mind you, on that committee, that team, the government-appointed team, who was also a member of the transition team when Petrotrin shut down. And he raised consistent objection, put all of these stumbling blocks in our way, in our deliberations and so on, which is why the thing couldn't complete. We were always raising issues from one thing to the other. And we couldn't complete, and that is why the Prime Minister had to say, well, we give the October the 31st deadline. But that wasn't our fault. It's not our fault, Trinidad and Tobago. We have the money to restart it. We accepted their offer in good faith. We accepted their offer, Minister of Finance. But the offer was not true, it was not whole, it was not wholesome, it could not stand. And because your offer couldn't stand, the responsibility is on the government to ensure that the process completes. But again, take note, he didn't talk about that today.
So it does not, the government has not succeeded in its effort to bankrupt the
No, no, of course not. Of course not. Of course not. But any local investor or anyone at all, foreign investor who would have had great capital outlay, the likes of which we would have had, would be very concerned, notwithstanding that, would be very, very concerned. Whether you have money or you don't have money, they would be very, very concerned that you would have expended this money and they close the door on you. We appeal to the Prime Minister, who we believe is the only one, the head of the cabinet, that can bring justice to this issue now, that can bring justice to Trinidad and Tobago, that can remove this dark cloud of uncertainty, economic chaos that is facing the country, and that can restore the conversation that will conclude this issue. We are, notwithstanding their cabinet decision, we appeal for that. And let me just say, we are very concerned. We are very concerned that all of our information is in the hands of the same individual who was against us. That same individual appointed by the government as part of TPHL's team, who was part of the transition, who consistently raised objection, who was part of the doubting Thomas that Petrotrin, that refinery, now remember, they said can't make money, close it down. We say it could. We prove how it could through our research and so on. And we would have provided information, real data to show how that could be. So somebody, as we speak, a number of persons as we speak, are in possession of our comprehensive business plan, our comprehensive roadmap as to how to start that refinery. All of the work Trinidad and Tobago on your behalf that Patriotic did, somebody is in possession of that. And it's not just an easy thing to just dismiss it like that and say, well, we now went out to open market. What of that information? Are those persons priests? Bye-bye. They're so honest that they wouldn't pass to their partner this comprehensive plan so that in the shortest possible time the thing will be started. This is Trinidad and Tobago. Inside COVID. This is a situation where people tell you one thing and another thing up. My God, this is what is happening here with us. Okay? And therefore, we have great trepidation around the fact that they have all of this data and now going out on the open market. And so all that has to happen is give a partner that and go fall on the ground with some file by the copying machine is left, and winner goes our plan into the hands of someone. Notwithstanding, we are not in a situation of utopia, we are not in a situation, unfortunately this is planet Earth where the devil is roaming. And we are not in heaven, and therefore we rather suspect something could occur with all our business plan and so on.
If those peers and some governments like operate for the refinery, when the union don't see the force to recover all the centers and this and this one, because from what you're saying, it seems that there's been some process.
But I did say that we would be meeting in council to our own executive colleagues and so on, and also with our attorneys to determine, what is it, should we go back again and so on, which is the best way forward in the circumstance. But that question is, we are too early to answer that question right now. It's early days still. We have both the resources and confidence that this thing could be. Look, The workers have pledged their support. Those workers have not gone out. In fact, in a contracting economy, thousands of workers are going home. The Petrotrin workers are today still unemployed. But the Petrotrin workers with years of experience and knowledge are still up to the task. And they are ready, willing, and able once we complete this process. All they want, all they require is for this process to be completed. And so, if we couldn't get a letter of commitment from the government that they agree to sell, you can't get a commitment from any institution. And so, we are now trying to determine whether it was planned or accidental or otherwise. The jury is still out on that. In the meantime, time is of the essence. And as time is of the essence, we want to put all our plans into action and put people to work. So, we call on the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, we call on you as perhaps the only person and in your capacity as leader of the government of Trinidad and Tobago to meet with us, have your team meet with us, and to examine the veracity of our claims, but more importantly, the commitment of Credit Suisse to close this, notwithstanding the Cabinet's decision. Maybe the Cabinet was not privy to the information of Credit Suisse. And obviously the Cabinet could not have responded to our letter because that letter was written after the Minister's letter. But the fact that we responded, it deserved a response. Okay? And so we want to thank the entire country, all of whom, and there are so many hundreds of thousands of persons who meet me in the streets, who consistently inquire, what is happening with this thing? Why the government is taking so long? When the government, you think the government will conclude? Every day people meet, and why think they are asking those questions? Because they are concerned about the economic future of Trinidad and Tobago. Patriotic is the silver lining in the cloud of economic darkness. Thank you very much. Any more? We'll be happy to. We don't have a time like ministers and we are not going to the Senate, so we can answer all of the questions. Written non-disclosure, but they said some things and we had was to respond to them today. Yeah? Let's check with our teams. We need to check with our teams. Yeah.